All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to RMU Psychology Presents our Let's Talk. For the spring semester, I will be starting with how to prepare and apply to graduate school. As always, just some virtual webinar reminders. If you guys can just mute your microphones. And if you have any questions or concerns, you can ask them in the chat bar, or we can have a discussion at the end of the presentation. So the presenters today is me. Hello, it's Amber. I am the first year graduate assistant, as well as a first year in the counseling program for the masters. My guest speaker today is Dr. Neha Pandit. She is the counseling psychology program coordinator for the master's program at Robert Morris, and she is obviously a professor here as well. So just a quick overview of what I'll be talking today is school searching, the application process, interviews, acceptance, financial aid and scholarships, possible graduate assistantships, different school types, and once in school. But I'm going to actually pass over the mic to Dr. Pandit. She's going to talk about our program specifically for a few minutes, just to give a quick rundown on how we run our program here at Robert Morris. So go ahead, Dr. Pandit.
Great. So we have a really wonderful counseling psychology graduate program. It's a master's in science. There are a couple of options for joining the program or entering the program. There is the kind of the traditional way you graduate and then you apply and you start and you go through the admissions process. There's also the 3+2 option, which is a really nice way to get your undergraduate degree and your master's within 5 years. So it kind of saves 1 year of school. And, the way that you would apply for the 3+2 program is you would express interest in your first year, your freshman year, and then you would meet with your advisors and you would course plan to make sure that you would be kind of set up to begin your master's classes and what would be your junior year of college. The master's program is 60 credits. It meets 2 evenings a week. In your first year, you're coming to campus Monday and Wednesday evening. In your second year, you're coming to campus Tuesday and Thursday evening. Starting from the summer to the 60 credits, the 2 years starts in the summer. So because it's in the evenings, despite, regardless of whether it's summer, spring, or fall, it's really conducive to working at the same time. So a lot of our students are working in the field and, some outside of the field or for some students as well, it's both. One of the strengths of our program has to do with the cohort model. Now, what that means is the students that you start with, the colleagues that you start with, are the colleagues that you graduate with. All of our classes are for our students only. So you go through all of your classes with the same group of students from beginning to end. And what we found is that has provided a really nice secondary source of source of support for the students because you get to know each other really well. And you remain lifelong contacts with one another. We've had very good success in kind of having that be the way that our cohorts kind of gel together. And that's in addition to our small ratios, which allow us to really foster development with our students and get to know our students. And the clinical component is there's one practicum, which happens, it's 100 hours, and it happens in the third semester of your first year. And then there are 2 internships, which happen in both semesters of your second year. And the internships are 300 hours each, so 600 hours total. I think our program is really unique. We've had a very good success with our students passing the NCC, which is the exam for licensure, or sorry, the NCE, which is the exam for licensure. And most of our students have full-time employment upon graduation. And several get offered positions at their internship sites.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Dr. Pandit.
Sure. Does anyone have questions? No? All right.
All right.
All right,
Thank you.
Amber. Okay, thank you. See you later.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
All right. So the first thing I'm going to talk about today is finding the right school. So when and if you decide to go back to school after receiving your bachelor's degree, or if you do like a 3+2, one of the first steps to consider is finding the school that best fits you. For some people, this can be a very easy process, especially if like the current school has the programs of interest. For others, it may be a little bit more difficult, but that's okay too. Some important things to consider, which I will discuss later on, is applications, scholarships and financial aid, and graduate assistantships. Other things to consider can be like program length, class days and times, being able to work while in school, and does the program meet your needs for your future? So with applying, obviously that's the first big step once you figured out what schools you are interested in. There are some things to consider. Some graduate schools have an application fee and some don't. So that's one big thing. Usually an application fee can run anywhere from like $40 to like $75. Depends on the school that you want to go to. Some schools have GPA requirements. Robert Morris does. I know that. You need, I believe a 3.0 to get into our program. Some schools may be fully on ground and some may only be online. It just depends on your program of interest and what the school offers. It is good to have a few schools in mind that could work for you. I did that personally. I applied to 3 different graduate schools. I applied here. I applied to Duquesne and Carlo. So with that being said, most schools have structured applications that may need the following: a curriculum vitae, a resume, your transcripts, letters of recommendation, and GRE results. While filling out your applications, it's like important to make sure everything is up to date as much as possible. It's like your newest resume, your newest CV, making sure like your transcripts, most schools only accept official ones. So it's important to make sure that's all handled and prepared. So here's like some examples of, resumes. I also put like an application process of like what an essay might look like. Each school provides a different form of an application essay that you might need to provide, which is usually like 1 to 2 pages, or it's only so many words, like maybe 500 to 750. It just depends on the school and what they're looking for. They will ask you specific questions. More importantly, they'll ask you why you think you're the best fit for their program. So it is important to give your best presentation in a paper form while applying to graduate school. So once the application process is done, they usually take about a week or 2. Some take a little bit longer to get back for the interview process. So obviously the next step is to obtain that interview. If you do obtain that, that is great. It is important to remember that you may not get an interview with your top school, and that's okay. It's also good to be considered that interviews may be held online because of the pandemic. But you still dress professionally. Usually it's just like your upper half, but like wear a nice shirt, make sure you don't look bummy. Before you get into the interview or interviews, make sure you do have the following information on the schools that you are being interviewed by, because each school is different. Each process is different. So it's important to have that correct information on your side so you make sure the information that's being presented to you matches up with what you found. A notebook and pen, because they might be having you do different things, like case scenarios. Some schools ask you to do case scenarios, so it's important to make sure you can write that information down so you can answer the questions that are being asked. And it's good to have questions for the school that you are being interviewed by, because that shows your peak interest. So the more questions you have that are applicable towards their program, that can be really useful for yourself and for them, that way they know what students are looking for. Take time to prepare for your interview, as there may be a group of students that are being interviewed at once. Since most interviews have moved to the online process, I know I personally had groups while I was being interviewed for graduate school. For RMU, it was a group of 4. So there was 3 other students with me, and we were being interviewed at once. And Duquesne, there was 11 of us in one big chat. So we all got interviewed at the same time. So while you're doing your interview, like, make sure you're being your authentic self, but maintain professionalism as well. It's important to, be you, but make sure that when you're doing it in the proper manner, and be proud of making it this far, and keep in mind that anything can happen. It's one of those things where graduate school is a whole different ballgame than your bachelor's degree. So remember, like, if you make it this far, and if you don't, that's okay too. Like, anything is possible. So hopefully, once you do the interview process, the next step is that acceptance. Be mindful that some schools can call you and some schools may email you. Be on the lookout for both. I got a phone call from Robert Morris and I got an email from Duquesne. Most schools have a deadline for acceptance, so be mindful if you're waiting for that specific school. Like, I know by Robert Morris, I had like a few weeks, and like when Duquesne got back to me, I had till like April to let them know. But once you find that deadline out, like, make sure you're mindful of the date and you get back to them sooner rather than later, especially if it's a school you want. It's much better to do it sooner than later, because if you don't, they'll fill up the slots with other students. Once you accept being in a program, the following can happen and can be sent to you: a formal acceptance letter from the dean, or by like a department head or somebody who runs that specific program. You will get information on your school account. So if like you're new to the school, they'll send you kind of how RMU did with like the card process, and your account information. They might send you information on scholarship opportunities and on award, and possibly information on financial aid as well, and information about your classes, textbooks you might need, and materials. Okay, so financial aid and scholarships. Once you have made an acceptance offer, one of the biggest steps can be for applying for that financial aid or to apply to other scholarships. Most schools do offer a scholarship award, but each school varies in the award size based on your cohort in class. The more students there are, the smaller that award might be. It just depends on your cohort size in your class. If you do need to apply to financial aid, apply sooner rather than later, because there are deadlines. You can search for scholarships outside of the school. There may be some opportunities for graduate students. It just honestly depends. Okay, so the next important thing I want to get into is the graduate assistantship. Most graduate schools do offer graduate assistantships. What is a graduate assistantship? Usually it varies from school to school. What you do is, if you become a GA, TA, or RA, as there are different names, you will work alongside your department. You will help the department head as well as fellow professors in that specific department. You'll do tasks and, do things like a webinar series like we do here. Your tasks vary from year to year. It just depends on what the school provides. There are some things to consider though. Most, if not all, schools have GA requirements. While trying to become a GA, you have to maintain like a certain GPA, so you have to be like a 3.0 or up. An essay would need to be completed, or some form of reasoning on why you would be the best fit. I know some schools offer letters of recommendation on your behalf to help with becoming a GA, and you would need time to work in the office, because we have to spend time in the office to help in the office, obviously. So school types. So since COVID is still around, it is important to be aware of like how schools are functioning right now because not everyone's functioning the same, especially since some cases are higher in areas than others. So some schools are on ground, like Robert Morris. Some schools are online. That varies from school to school, and some schools provide both. Just depends, especially if you're out of state right now. I know some schools are allowing out-of-state students to do the online program instead of the in-person. It also is important to know that you can be part-time in some schools as well as full-time, or you may only be full-time. This is usually part of the application process. I know while filling mine, like my applications out, like I was able to click besides for RMU because RMU is only full-time because you're continuously in school. I know Duquesne, like I was able to click on part-time or full-time. Carlo, the same thing. Program length can obviously vary. Our counseling program can be a 2-year program or the 3+2. Some schools have programs that might be 3 years, especially if you're a part-time student. So if you are a part-time student, it will obviously take you a little bit longer to obtain this kind of degree. So once you are accepted into graduate school, there are some things you should do and consider doing. Obviously, finding a mentor is like one of the first steps, just like how you did while you were in your undergrad. I'm sure everybody has a mentor that they rely on, or at least a professor that you can be close to and get that relationship with. It's good to have somebody to guide you and support you through challenging times. These relationships can develop informally, but it's also good to seek somebody that help you become the psychologist or individual you are meant to be in our field. Be opening to self-exploration. You know, it's important to know the statement, counselor, know thyself. Before you can begin to help others, you have to find out who you are as a counselor first. That goes with your 3-article orientation. That can go with the type of psychology work you want to do. If you want to work in addictions counseling or family counseling, adolescence, there's so many different routes. So it's important to figure out what works best for you while going into this field. And that kind of works within finding your own path. So these two kind of connect well, nice to each other. It's important to know that, like, you know, some people might do their master's, some people might get into a doctoral program, you know? I mean, it varies from person to person. Somebody might just keep their bachelor's degree. So finding your own path is just as important to your self-exploration because that's who you're going to be. The last thing is to be prepared to evolve within the field. Psychology and counseling are forever evolving. You know, there's going to be new discoveries, as there has been for how long, within the field of psychology. And there's so much more to figure out within our field and so much more that we are looking into and learning. So it's one of those things to realize that some things happen, just like telehealth. You know, we had to explore into telehealth and all that stuff. As we continue to evolve as a field, we also have to remember we're going to evolve with it. Okay, so I'm going to go back to the questions, but these are some of the resources I used. I am going to stop presenting now for the questions.